Joining us right now to talk about the future of TikTok after the House passed its divest or ban bill yesterday. Jessica Lessin, founder and CEO of The Information. Jessica, it's great to see you this morning. Your reaction to the idea that the former Treasury Secretary may be putting a group together to make this his own?
Well, I think the former Treasury Secretary has to check Chinese law. I really, Andrew, don't think there's any chance the Chinese government allows TikTok to be sold in the U.S. They've said previously they wouldn't, and I don't see that being any different. So we'll see, but I think it's highly unlikely.
Are you in the camp, then, that this is not a divest bill, if you will, but very much a ban bill?
Absolutely. I mean, the Chinese government, A, they don't want Chinese algorithms in the hands of U.S. companies. B, they've been regulating TikTok and tightening the screws against it in China. So I really think those perspectives are being missed. And what the House passed is effectively a ban bill, yes.
And then are you of the view that TikTok represents a current threat to the U.S. insofar as the idea that the Chinese, talk about them regulating TikTok, are either using the data they have already and or influencing the algorithm in a way to influence Americans? Or do you consider it more of a prospective threat, which is to say that TikTok has so many users here in the U.S., if the government were to do that in the future, that they could have such an impact, but not necessarily that they've already done such?
I think what's clear from our reporting, Andrew, is that TikTok is controlled by ByteDance, which, you know, the Chinese government has a stake in the company. Our reporting has shown that. So there's no questions about the ties. Even a key app that now creators are using to edit their TikToks and is being integrated is held and controlled by ByteDance, the parent. The app's called CapCut, not TikTok. So there's no way you can really draw a bright line between them. And I think that is and should be a cause for concern.
What do you make of the board in terms of the governance of ByteDance? There are many, or several, I should say it's only 5 people, but people that are obviously unrelated to the government per se, and in certain cases include, we talked about him before, Bill Ford, who runs General Atlantic. And we had the Treasury Secretary, former Treasury Secretary, just saying that he's had a conversation with him, or effectively intimating that, to roll into a future deal.
Look, investors in ByteDance are really in a bind here. I mean, ByteDance is their golden goose. I mean, already valued at more than $300 billion and would be way more if public, if you apply the same Meta's multiple. I think what's interesting now is our reporting suggests investors are actually taking more of a back seat in the lobbying of the U.S. government than they were the other times this ban has come around. And I think the growing pressure from China, the fact that large tech investors just have other issues now, AI, so many other things they want to push Washington on, we're not seeing the same level of lobbying. I think you'll see some, I suspect Sequoia will get involved, but again, Sequoia is also trying to stay under the radar now that they split off their China business. So I think obviously investors want to maximize their golden goose here, but I think they're also realistic that this issue has been what's hanging over ByteDance's potential to go public anywhere. And so maybe there's a little silver lining here. Of course, there are many, many steps still to a ban.
Jessica, if in fact there is we'll call it a divestiture, what do you think the value, if that could even happen? And I know that for you sounds like a big what if. Yep. What do you think the value would be of it? We tried to ask Steve Mnuchin about that. He didn't want to negotiate in public. I don't know if you have an idea of what the number would be. I know we've heard numbers like $50 billion, but then we've also heard it doesn't make any money.
You know, Andrew, I think it could be more. I mean, if you apply kind of estimates of 20 billion in revenue, you know, 8x forward, I mean, you're potentially talking about something, you know, it's 160. Now, of course, there's a discount if you have a forced sale. So I don't think that is the price, but it is a big, big number. Yes, we reported yesterday that it's still losing money, but, you know, it is the growth engine for ByteDance. Growth is maturing in China. You know, TikTok is taking over in terms of consumer experience. This could be very, very valuable. Of course, if there are strings attached, like it has to happen, it could be a sweet deal.
If it gets banned or pushed out, do you think that they could I mean, it's possible that TikTok could say, look, we're not going to give you the algorithm. Is it possible that you could buy whatever remains of it and effectively try to recreate the algorithm? I mean, Facebook obviously has such an algorithm. You're starting to see this type of thing in other realms, YouTube, with YouTube Shorts and the like.
I think the most likely thing, ByteDance would say, okay, it's off in the U.S. I mean, TikTok does operate in other countries. It's also banned in other countries. I think they just wash their hands and say, we can't operate here. I don't see how you would kind of decouple the components. Okay.